Hi everyone and welcome back to my YouTube channel. So today guys, this is just something that interested me when I was reading the book of Acts. In chapter 27 and chapter 28, what happens is Paul is being held as prisoner, but he's being transported to Caesar because he's going to present his case before Caesar. And he is on board a ship that has prisoners and guards on there as well. And so they were on their way to Caesar. So at some point they were traveling and then there was some sort of weather issues and they stopped at this other place called Fairhaven. But they had already been late because the weather had prevented them from getting there when they needed to. So they were late already. But anyway, so Paul told them, look, and in verse 10 it says, Paul warned them, men, I can see that our voyage is going to be disastrous and bring great loss to ship and cargo, and to our own lives also. But it says that the centurion didn't listen and they continued to move forward with continuing on the journey. And in that moment, I feel that the Holy Spirit told Paul that this is what's going to happen. There's going to be great loss. But the centurion unfortunately didn't listen. And to me, that is wisdom that Paul gave the centurion to say that, and the wisdom was from God, right? To say that this is what's going to happen. But they didn't listen. Anyway, so that's the first point that I wanted to make. By the way, there was 276 people on board, I think. So anyway, they set sail and they got caught up in heavy storm that left them at sea in a wind for many days and many nights. So, as Paul predicted, there was a storm that literally trapped them. And throughout this time, they were stressed. Obviously, they were struggling and they weren't getting where they needed to be. So they were stuck. And there was basically just nothing but storm surrounding. But during that time, Paul still gave them a message from God. And the message said this. In chapter 27, verse 23, it says, last night, an angel of God, whose I am and whom I serve, stood beside me and said, do not be afraid, Paul. You must stand trial before Caesar, and God has graciously given you the lives of all who sail with you. So keep up your courage, men. And so this is Paul speaking. So keep up your courage, men, for I have faith in God that it will happen just as he has told me. Nevertheless, we must run aground on some island. So God gave them this message. So remember, there was a message in the beginning to say, look, there's a warning. But then what happened was that they were in the storm. There was nothing that they could do. And God still sent a message to say, I'm going to make sure that you all guys are safe. So that was the first two things. And even though they did not listen to wisdom initially or that warning, there was still grace given to them during the storm. And so after God had given Paul that word and they realized that, okay, they weren't going to die. The storm was still raging on. And for quite a few days, they were stuck in a sea and they were obviously rocking and there was a lot of things happening and they had to let certain things go from the ship. And it was a huge struggle basically, just throughout the rest of that part of the chapter. But also what had happened during that time is that they weren't eating. So at some point in time, Paul urged them to eat because in verse 33, this is what it said. Just before dawn, Paul urged them all to eat. For the last 14 days, he said, you have been in constant suspense and have gone without food. You haven't eaten anything. Now I urge you to take some food. You need it to survive. Not one of you will lose a single hair from his head. After this, he took some bread. He gave thanks to God in front of them all. Then he broke it and began to eat. They were all encouraged and ate some food, then amongst food for themselves. And by the way, because they ate, there was less cargo on the ship and the weight wasn't as much. And they also threw away the grain into the sea. And at some point in time, daylight came and long story short, they ended up on an island. God allowed them to get to an island. But even getting to that island was a struggle. By the way, obviously, Paul gave that word to them and said again, like, look, not a hair on your head will be lost, to try and reassure them again. And I feel like this is something God probably told him as well. Because it's very interesting, the specificity of not losing a hair on your head. Because we lose a lot of hair every day, right? But anyway, he said that nonetheless. And like I said, they then ate, and there was a lot of things that happened in between that. And then they landed at an island called Malta. And at that island, interestingly enough, the people who lived there welcomed them, was unusually kind to them, and was very hospitable to them. And at some point, they stayed also by the chief. The chief's name was Publius, I think. And they stayed there, and the chief even welcomed them. When Paul got there, they saw that the chief's father was very ill, and Paul prayed for him, and he was healed. And a few other sick people from the village then also came, and he prayed for them, and they were healed. And they were amazed by all of this. And of course, he must have preached the gospel there as well, or spoken to them about God. But anyway, long story short, they then got a ship there from these people that or from the area, and they set sail back on course. And you know, this entire journey is insane, right? From start to finish. Because initially there was wisdom given to them to say, look, don't make this journey. Don't do it, or don't go from here to make that journey. Rather, probably wait and then go. But they didn't listen. And then what happened was that all of these, they were stressing. They thought that they were going to die. They had to like let go. There was a lot of things that they had to physically do to relieve the ship of weight. And they were in distress the entire time. They couldn't see where they were going, all of this. Or rather, there was no land in sight. Yet God still gave them grace, and God said, look, I'm going to save you. Because of the fact that Paul was on board. And Paul said, I'm going to save the other people because you need to present your case to Caesar. And and this was very important to God. So he saved everyone there. And so Paul encouraged them. But anyway, so they got to the island, and Paul did some work there as well. So with all that had happened, obviously, to my understanding, they weren't necessarily supposed to go through all of that, because there was a warning beforehand. There was wisdom given. There was guidance. But they did it anyway. And yet God used that lack of wisdom on their part, their lack of taking advice on their part, for his good. And God turned it around. And he did something wonderful, and he did miraculous things there. Both on the ship, in the hearts probably of both the prisoners and the guards, and then also in the hearts of the villagers on that island. And so, yeah, I mean, this is just an encouragement that, you know, sometimes we make not so good choices. Sometimes we don't listen to wisdom when we should. But God can still turn it around. And even though it's going to cost us a lot of kicking, a lot of fighting, a lot of doing X, Y, Z, which God didn't necessarily intend for us to go through, he is still going to come out the victor at the end. We are still victors because he is our God, and because he wants what's best for us, and because there is a purpose for us at the end. So anyway, I wanted to encourage you guys to just have faith that God is going to help you through the times that you are going through, and that he still has grace. But also, I wanted to say that pay attention to the wisdom you are given. Pay attention to when God says, don't do this, right? And I don't want it to mean, or I don't want that to sort of discourage people from doing things that they feel like God is still telling them to do. But just to be wise in certain things that you are doing, and to listen to wise counsel as well. But anyway, so I hope that this blessed you. I hope that it's encouraged you, and I hope that it points you towards God, and I hope that you guys have a good day. I hope that you guys have a great week further, and God bless.